when I hear that whisper and it starts to get louder, I always think to myself, if I don't take action now, bad things are going to start happening. Like, this is just going to get worse. And that's usually the whisper, guys. It's a whisper into action. It's a whisper to say something. It's a whisper to do something. It's a whisper to change something. God doesn't put a dream on your heart for it to go unfulfilled. God put that dream on your heart because you and only you are meant to achieve it. And you have to keep listening to that whisper in your soul for what you and only you are called forth to do in this world. It is never wrong. Welcome back to this episode of the Low Bottom High Rise podcast with me, Moira Casaba, your host, and this episode of Listen to the Whisper. So I'm coming off the heels of a big speaking engagement. And part of that keynote speech that I gave, we talked about failure and how does getting comfortable with failure tie into listening to the whisper. So I gave 4 examples during my speech. The first being Michael Jordan. So Michael Jordan, we all know, most people know that he got cut from his high school basketball team. I don't know about you, but I have athletic children, right? They're involved in all the sports. They do all the things. They're very driven. They're very competitive. And I think about that with a son that's going into high school. And I think about the power of that negative voice. If my son has a coach that says, you're not good enough, you're not even making this team, you're cut, what that would do to that dream in his heart. It would crush him, right? And I get why most people quit when they hear that voice. But what Michael Jordan did not do was quit. He did not let the voices of the outside world dictate his dream and his destiny. He didn't quit. And he went on to become, by most standards, the greatest basketball player of all time. 6 NBA championships. The second example I gave, and this is just getting comfortable and understanding that you've got that whisper in your soul that's calling you to greatness, right? I say over and over again, God doesn't put a dream on your heart for it to go unfulfilled. God put that dream on your heart because you and only you are meant to achieve it, are meant to live into it. And we have to hold on to that and listen for that knowing and listen for that voice amid the judgments, amid the failures. Second example, Reggie Jackson. This one's my favorite. I'm a baseball girl, come from a long lineage of baseball in my family. And Reggie Jackson struck out 2,600 times. That might not mean a lot to people, but here's the statistic, guys. Are you ready for this? He struck out the most in baseball history. He holds the title for most strikeouts in baseball history, 2,600 times. Can you imagine experiencing quote unquote failure 2,600 times? But that's not what he's remembered for. He didn't let these so-called failures stop him from achieving his baseball dream, being inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame, becoming an all-star, being remembered truly for the number of home runs, not the strikeouts. The next example I gave was Oprah Winfrey. I mean, we all know where Oprah is in the world, right? Her start in television was not a strong one. There were people telling her, you will never work. This will never work. This is not going to be received by the world. What if Oprah Winfrey listened to that voice? We have to have the ability to override the voices the opinions of other people, right? Look what Oprah went on to become and do in the world. One of the greatest thought leaders of our generation, multiple generations, quite literally changed the history of the world. I have failed a million times. And it is very true that successful people just fail more. I don't even like the word. I don't think it's a thing. Failure to me is not a thing. It's that didn't work, pivot. That didn't work, pivot. That didn't work, pivot. I don't like how that feels, pivot. I don't like how that feels, pivot. Fell on my face, pivot. Right? You have to build an armor. And you have to keep listening to that whisper in your soul for what you and only you are called forth to do in this world. It is never wrong, ever. The voices in your head that you might be confused by are often wrong. But the knowing, the whisper, it's never wrong. Never, ever, ever. And I get, because I coach a lot of women and I've been through this myself, that so often the naysayers and the opinions can be from those that love us the most, can be from those that are closest to us, the people living in our home, our parents, our spouses. But that's where it's so important to just hang on tight to the whisper, to the knowing. And remember that the people around us, the spouses, the parents that are trying to talk us out of things, their number one priority is safety, right? Is stability for us. They don't want to see us take risk. That's really uncomfortable for those that love us. But if you are being called forth to it, and you put in the work, and you put in the time, and you keep putting one foot in front of the other despite the so-called failures along the way, it will happen. The dream in your heart is there for a reason. And I'm going to end with this because the next episode, I'm going to kind of go into the story about this, but I kind of want to set it up. It's my absolute belief, and it has been for decades, that when we don't listen to the whisper gets louder and it gets bigger. And for me, it almost becomes like a monkey on my back, right? Like it's just a cloak that I can't shake it. And it spurs me finally into action. But the longer I wait, the longer I dismiss the whisper, the more pain I get into. I can remember, I'm just going to say a friend because I don't want to bring anyone's name or anything into it. But if we'll say a friend of mine went through a awful, traumatic divorce. And there were a lot of dark, unhealthy, that's an understatement, things happening in the marriage that looking back, of course, she said, I knew something was off. I should have listened to my intuition years ago. And I should have listened again when it got louder and the suspicion grew over time and I just kept pushing it down and I kept wanting it to not be real and I kept living in this fairy tale of what I wanted my marriage to be. And when we get out in the beginning, right, when we get out of the relationship or out of the job that we are being called to leave, we can spare ourselves so much pain and sometimes torture, really. And so just remember that the quicker we can listen to the whisper, it really is the easier, softer way of living and life. So I want to encourage you in that today, because when I hear that whisper and it starts to get louder, I always think to myself, if I don't take action now, bad things are going to start happening. Like this is just going to get worse. And just that little awareness and that knowledge puts me into action quicker. So whatever it is in your life that you're hearing the whisper to move, to take action, and that's usually the whisper, guys. I want to make that clear that it's a whisper into action. It's a whisper to say something. It's a whisper to do something. It's a whisper to change something, right? Take the action. I can't help but think of Mel Robbins' 5-second rule, right? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Act. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Do it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Have the conversation. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Do something in that moment of what I always call inspiration, right? Take action in the moment of inspiration. It might be take action in the moment of desperation. And I'll give you a very real example in my life that happens every once in a while over the years. My husband and I can be at a place where I'm like, we should probably go talk to our therapist about this because it's like, would help to have a third party involved. And I push it away and I push it under the rug and then it comes up bigger again. And I'm like, we should really get in there and talk to her because this is like a big thing that we need to sort out. And I push it away and we get back to kids and life and, all the things. And then it gets bigger and it gets bigger. And so now I have learned I hope you find this as funny as I do. I have learned in the moment of frustration and of anger when we are like going back and forth, I just slowly take out my phone and I send a little text message. Can we make an appointment? I am taking action literally in the moment of the emotion, right? When I hear the voice, when I know what I am supposed to do. But so often when we let the emotion pass, we don't take the action. Take the action in the moment of inspiration or, unfortunately, desperation, because it's very unlikely that you're going to take the action later. What is more likely to happen is it's going to get harder. It's going to get worse. It's going to get bigger. Take the action. Listen to the whisper. Thank you guys so much for joining this episode and this podcast. Guys, I hope you share these with your friends, with your family, on your social media. Tag me, reach out to me. I love to hear the impact of these, especially this specific series of LTTW, Listen to the Whisper. And thanks for joining, guys. See you next week.